The year is 1258, February 13th. In the golden halls of the Abbasid Palace, where Caliph al-Mustasim has ruled for 36 years, the fountains have gone silent. That is the first sign. In Baghdad, the city of wisdom, where water runs like wine and scholars from 3 continents cross deserts and seas to study in the greatest library on earth, fountains do not fall quiet without reason. They whisper only one message: the end has come. Beyond the palace walls, the Mongol army stretches to the horizon, a sea of riders, hundreds of thousands of warriors from the steppe, a world without cities, without books, without philosophy. They understand only one language: conquest. And in a matter of days, they are about to erase a civilization that has survived for 8 centuries. But what will haunt the world isn't just the fall of Baghdad. What will haunt the world is what they do after the gates break, what they do to the royal family, to the caliph, to his sons, to his daughters, to his wife. Because the Mongols didn't merely kill, they erased, they made examples, and what they did to the family of al-Mustasim was so vicious that Persian chroniclers, who saw it with their own eyes, refused to put every detail to ink. Until now. Here at Dark Chronicles, we dig where history tried to bury its own screams. Persian manuscripts, Mongol military records, letters from Venetian traders who escaped the firestorm. Every viewpoint is a shard of a shattered mirror, and piece by piece we bring the forgotten truth back into the light. So let's return to Baghdad, because right now the gates are splintering. And what happens over the next 7 days will change the Islamic world forever. To understand the catastrophe, you have to understand the man at its center. Al-Mustasim is not just a king. He is the caliph, the deputy of God on earth, the successor of the Prophet Muhammad, head of an empire that once stretched from Spain to India. He is the 37th caliph of the Abbasid dynasty, a line that has ruled uninterrupted for 800 years. But by this point, the dynasty is old, and so is its confidence. Al-Mustasim is weak, comfortable, surrounded by courtiers who tell him only what he wants to hear. He spends his days in luxury, trusting in titles and traditions, believing that his status alone makes him untouchable. And when the Mongols begin to move toward Baghdad, he does what a man like him has done his entire life. He assumes the world will blink first. He believes Allah will protect him. He believes no army, no matter how savage, would dare strike the caliphate itself. He believes Baghdad is too important, too sacred, too inevitable to ever truly fall. He is wrong. The Mongols are led by Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, and by the time they reach the outskirts of Baghdad, they are no longer an army. They are a storm. They have already destroyed more than 40 cities across Persia. They've crushed armies 10 times their size. They've built mountains of skulls as warnings. They've turned rivers red as signatures. Now they stand before the richest city on earth, and Hulagu sends al-Mustasim a letter. The Persian historian Atta Malik Juvaini, who traveled with the Mongol army, preserves its words. The meaning is simple, brutal, unmistakable. Surrender, and you will be spared. Resist, and your city will become dust. Your palaces will burn. Your family will suffer. Your name will be erased. Al-Mustasim reads the letter and laughs. He gathers his courtiers and says, "These barbarians don't understand who they speak to. I am the caliph. God will not abandon me." But God has other plans. Or maybe God simply looks away. On January 29th, 1258, the Mongols begin their assault. This is not a normal siege. The Mongols do not rely only on ladders and battering rams. They bring Chinese engineers, men who understand explosive powder, rockets, and machines Baghdad's defenders have never seen. Day and night, the walls are hammered, the sky trembles, stones burst, towers collapse. The defenders fight bravely, but bravery is not enough when the enemy has perfected killing into a science. Baghdad bleeds from 1,000 wounds. On February 5th, the walls finally break. On the 10th, organized resistance is finished. And on February 13th, Hulagu stands inside the throne room. The Caliph kneels before him. His golden robes are torn. His turban, the symbol of divine authority, lies in the dust like a discarded rag. The man who believed himself protected by heaven now looks very, very mortal. Al-Mustasim begs for mercy. Hulagu stares at him with something close to curiosity, like a hunter studying a creature that never understood it was prey. Later, the historian Rashid al-Din describes the scene. Hulagu asks coldly, "Where is your God now?" The Caliph cannot answer. His lips move as if in prayer, but no sound comes. Whether he is praying or broken beyond speech, no one knows. Hulagu laughs. Then he says, "You loved gold. Let us see if gold will feed you." And what happens next becomes one of the most infamous moments in history. The Mongols drag the entire treasury of the caliphate into the throne room. Mountains of wealth, centuries of tribute and conquest piled into glittering heaps. Gold, silver, jewels, relics, the concentrated heartbeat of an empire. They lay it before Al-Mustasim, and they force him to eat it. Gold shoved into his mouth, silver coins ground between his teeth. The room fills with laughter as his teeth crack, as his throat burns, as his body rebels against the metal being driven into him. When he refuses, they beat him until he obeys. This goes on for hours. The Caliph is not allowed to faint, not allowed to die. Not yet. By the time they stop, his stomach is swollen and ruined, but the torture is only the doorway. Because Hulagu has ordered the royal family brought in, Al-Mustasim has 3 sons and 4 daughters, and the first to be dragged forward is the eldest daughter, Princess Fatima. She is 27 years old, famous across the Islamic world for her beauty and her mind. She studied philosophy, speaks 5 languages, wrote poetry read in courts from Cairo to Damascus. A woman raised on the belief that knowledge could save the world. Now she is forced to her knees before her father. Mongol tradition, recorded in their own secret history, demands special treatment for high-born captives. But special doesn't mean mercy. It means public humiliation. Hulagu orders her robes removed. She refuses, so the soldiers rip them away. Rashid al-Din, even writing years later, cannot bring himself to describe everything. He leaves only a chilling line. What happened to her happened before her father's eyes, and when it was over, she was no longer alive. Other accounts are clearer. A Venetian merchant, Marco Polo the Elder, not the famous traveler, but a relative who passed through Baghdad, later writes what survivors whispered to him. Fatima is violated by multiple men, one after another, while her father is forced to watch. When she dies, her body is thrown to the dogs outside the palace. Pause there for a second. A woman called Princess, a poet, a scholar, reduced to a trophy of cruelty for conquerors who see a library as kindling and refinement as weakness, and her father, the most powerful man in the Islamic world, sitting helpless, watching, unable to lift a hand. But the night is not over, not even close. Because after Fatima, Hulagu calls in the sons, and the Caliph knows what comes next. He just doesn't know how long he'll be forced to endure it. The three sons of al-Mustasim are brought in next. They are young, too young to understand that history has already slammed the door behind them. The eldest, Prince Mubarak, is 23. The middle son, Prince Ahmed, is 21. The youngest, Prince Ali, is 14, still half a child, dragged forward into a room that smells of blood and broken stone. Hulagu looks at them the way a butcher looks at livestock, measuring, deciding, already knowing the outcome. He asks them the same question he asked their father. Where is your God now? For a heartbeat, the princes hesitate. Their world has collapsed so fast it doesn't feel real. Yesterday, they were heirs to the Abbasid Empire. Today, they stand chained in a throne room that belongs to someone else. Prince Mubarak steps forward. Maybe it's courage. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's the last spark of a life built on certainty. He says, Allah will punish you for this. Hulagu nods slowly, like a teacher acknowledging a student's answer. Then he gives a quiet command. There is a Mongol rule, documented by Juvaini and other chroniclers, that royal blood must not be spilled openly. Whether it's respect, superstition, or fear of a curse, they believe that letting royal blood soak into the earth brings misfortune. So they kill kings without shedding blood. And for these three princes, Hulagu chooses one of their oldest methods, the method of the carpet. The boys are wrapped tightly in heavy rugs, so tight they can't struggle, can't breathe properly, can't even turn their heads. Their voices, muffled inside the wool, rise into terrified, pleading cries. Then the carpets are laid flat on the palace floor, and the Mongol horsemen ride over them, again and again and again. The sound, Rashid al-Din writes, is like wood breaking. Not a clean snap, something uglier. Bones shattering under hooves, flesh crushed into the marble. The cries grow thinner, then less human, then vanish. The caliph sits frozen. He does not scream. He does not leap forward. He does not beg. Not because he doesn't want to, because there is nothing left in him that still believes begging matters. His sons are dead. And Hulagu isn't finished. There are still 3 daughters remaining. The oldest of them, Princess Zainab, is 25. The second, Princess Khadija, is 20. The youngest, Princess Aisha, is 12, small enough that her bracelets still slip down her wrists like she's playing dress-up in an adult world. For these girls, Hulagu decides bloodless death is too simple. Mongol practice, recorded in multiple sources, often spares high-born women from execution, but not from fate. They are taken as spoils, not for common soldiers, but for generals and nobles. Living trophies, walking reminders that the Mongols own not just your land, but your future. Zainab and Khadija are seized first. They are handed over to Mongol commanders like gifts, like rewards for loyal service. They are dragged out of Baghdad, out into the endless steppe, thousands of miles from the gardens and libraries of their childhood. They will live in felt tents among people who do not speak Arabic, who do not read, who do not build cities. Their names will be hard for their captors to pronounce, and so those names will soon disappear. A Mongol document discovered centuries later in the archives of Ulaanbaatar briefly mentions 2 Arab women of high birth given to the general Kitbuka after Baghdad's conquest. And then, nothing. No record after that, no graves, no poems, no family line. They don't die in ink. They just stop existing. But little Aisha is not given away. Hulagu keeps her for himself, not as a concubine, but as proof, as a symbol that even the caliph's bloodline can be bent into Mongol shape. He forces her into Mongol clothing, forces her to speak Mongolian, forces her to abandon her name. A Persian chronicler, writing decades later, tells of meeting an elderly woman in Tabriz who claimed to be Aisha. She is 80 by then, with a back as curved as a bow and an accent that breaks her Arabic into strange, foreign pieces. She barely remembers Baghdad, but she remembers the night her family died. She remembers Hulagu leaning down to her and whispering something so soft only she could hear. "You are the last. Your line ends with you." And she says, with dead eyes and a voice that has spent a lifetime swallowing its own grief, "He was right." Now think about that. A child who should have grown up in silk and sunlight instead grows old in exile, carrying the ashes of a dynasty inside her chest, living long enough to watch the world move on without her. Meanwhile, back in the throne room, Al-Mustasim still lives. Barely. His stomach is ruined from the gold. His spirit has been torn out and trampled. He has watched his sons crushed and his daughters stolen. And still the Mongols do not kill him right away. Because Hulagu wants that last act to mean something, to feel ceremonial. He orders the caliph wrapped in a carpet, just like his sons. Tight, suffocating. The caliph can hardly breathe, hardly move. The darkness inside the rug is absolute, but no horses come. Instead, the Mongols build a wooden platform above him, and on that platform, they hold a feast. Hulagu and his generals sit directly over the bundled caliph, eating roasted meat, drinking wine, laughing and telling stories while the man beneath them slowly dies. Every shift of weight presses the carpet down. Every burst of laughter steals air from his lungs. The feast lasts all night, and when dawn comes and the last cups are drained, they roll the carpet out. Rashid al-Din describes the body. The caliph's face is purple. His eyes are open. There is no wound, no blood in sight. Just the frozen proof of suffocation. The Abbasid dynasty ends right there. 800 years of unbroken rule, wiped out in a single week. But the horror doesn't stop at the palace gates, because Baghdad itself is now defenseless, and the Mongols move through the city like fire through dry grass. They slaughter without pause. Men, women, children, scholars, merchants, imams, beggars, it doesn't matter. Whole neighborhoods are erased in hours. Bodies pile in streets so thick that horses struggle to step over them. Chroniclers estimate that close to 1 million people die. A city that once held the brightest minds on earth becomes a graveyard so large it has no edges. Then the Mongols turn to the House of Wisdom, the legendary library, the pride of the Islamic world, home to manuscripts and scientific works found nowhere else on the planet. They burn it. They throw books into the Tigris until the river runs black with ink, and then red with blood. One eyewitness, a scholar named Ibn al-Fawati, survives only because he hides inside a well. Days later, when he crawls out, Baghdad is silent. He writes, "I stayed in the well for 3 days. When I came out, the city was dead. The streets were covered with corpses. The air smelled of death, and dogs ate the bodies because there was no one left to bury them." Imagine walking through your own city and hearing nothing but flies and distant cries. Imagine the smell, the smoke, the ink, the rot. Imagine a civilization losing not only its people but its memory, its books, its art, its arguments, its dreams, shredded and scattered like ashes in the wind. The Mongol Empire will go on to last more than 150 years. They will conquer more land than any empire before them. But there is one thing they cannot conquer. They cannot erase remembrance. Because even when Baghdad falls, The story of what happened to the caliph's family does not die. It is whispered by survivors, passed down in fragments, told in low voices to children who listen wide-eyed, feeling the terror seep into their bones. And centuries later, those whispers reach us. We tell them now not to reopen wounds for fun, but because some truths are too terrible to forget. Because if we forget them, then history doesn't end. It repeats. When people talk about the fall of Baghdad, they usually talk about numbers: 1 million dead, a library burned, an empire collapsed. But numbers don't scream. Numbers don't beg. Numbers don't remember what it felt like to be alive 5 minutes before the world turned black. So let's stay inside that week a little longer, because the end of a civilization isn't a single moment. It's a chain of moments, each one snapping something that can never be repaired. After the caliph dies under that platform, Hulagu doesn't stop. If anything, the killing gets easier, because now there is no symbolic barrier left, no caliph of God, no sacred shield, no political cost, just a city full of people who belong to nobody. The Mongols fan out in organized waves. They are methodical, not frenzied, not chaotic, like a harvest. They go district by district, house by house. If someone is found hiding, they are dragged into the street and cut down. If a family tries to flee, they are chased like animals. If a group gathers in a mosque hoping sanctuary still means something, they are slaughtered where they kneel. The survivors later say the streets ran so thick with blood that sandals stuck to the ground, that the cries lasted days, that by the third night somehow, the city smelled less like smoke and more like meat left too long in the sun. And it isn't only the poor who die. Baghdad is the center of scholarship. Doctors, astronomers, translators, mathematicians, the people who carried the world's knowledge forward, are hunted down as carefully as soldiers. To the Mongols, a scholar is not a treasure. He is a threat. Because knowledge is power, and the Mongols are not here to rule this city. They are here to end it. The House of Wisdom burns for days. Imagine it. Rooms lined floor to ceiling with texts from Greece, Persia, India, Arabia. Centuries of argument and discovery. Works copied by hand, illuminated, loved, debated, improved. A living brain of a civilization. And now men who can't read are feeding it to fire. Books are thrown into the Tigris so fast, the water clogs with pages. The ink dissolves into the current until the river becomes a moving bruise. Black first, then red. There is a story, told by multiple sources, that a Mongol soldier rides his horse into a flooded courtyard and sees floating manuscripts pressed around the animal's legs. He laughs and says, "Look, even the water tries to learn from us." It's a cruel joke. But jokes like that are how conquerors stay human while doing inhuman things. By the 7th day, Baghdad is no longer a city. It is a carcass. Walls still stand, sure. Palaces still cast shadows. But life is gone. The markets are smashed. The canals are choked with bodies. The alleys are piled so high with dead that the survivors can't walk through them without stepping on someone's face. And for the first time in the memory of the Islamic world, the capital of the caliphate is silent. No call to prayer, no laughter, no pages turning, nothing. Now here's the twist history always gives you after a tragedy this large. The Mongols don't stay to rebuild. They don't even really stay to rule in the way Baghdad once understood rule. They loot, they burn, they make their point. Then they move on to the next city, the next kingdom, the next horizon. Because that's what the Mongol machine does. It moves. Baghdad is a warning, an exclamation mark hammered into the map to terrify everyone else into surrender before they become the next corpse-filled river. And it works. Across the Middle East, leaders hear what happened here and begin opening gates without a fight. The Mongols don't have to kill as many thousands anymore, because Baghdad has already killed millions for them in fear. But even as the Mongols ride west, even as the smoke fades and the river slowly clears, the world can't stop staring at that palace scene. The gold forced into a caliph's mouth, a princess torn apart while her father watched, princes crushed without a drop of royal blood spilled, daughters vanished into the steppe, a child renamed, reshaped, kept alive as a trophy of erasure. People whisper those details the way you whisper a curse, not because they want to relive it, because they need to understand it. Because if something like that can happen to Baghdad, the heart of knowledge, the jewel of the world, then it can happen anywhere. And that realization changes history. The Islamic Golden Age doesn't vanish overnight, but the center of gravity shifts. Cities that once sent scholars to Baghdad now become the new hubs: Cairo, Damascus, later Samarkand, and beyond. The world keeps moving, but it moves with a scar. You can trace that scar through centuries, in the way empires begin to build stronger walls, in the way rulers stop trusting tradition alone to save them, in the way libraries start being guarded like fortresses, but scars also live in stories. After Baghdad falls, survivors scatter like sparks into the desert and across the sea. Some end up in Aleppo, some in Cairo, some in tiny villages where nobody cares about dynasties, only about tomorrow's bread. And in those places, at night, they tell their children what they saw. Not all of it. Not the worst pieces. Not the parts that would make a child's mind implode. But enough. Enough to keep the memory alive. Enough that the Abbasid family doesn't disappear entirely. Because remember, the Mongols could destroy buildings. They could burn books. They could crush bloodlines. But they couldn't crush remembrance. History is stubborn that way. The Mongol Empire itself eventually fractures. The great Khans turn on each other. The descendants of conquerors become rulers, then become ordinary men, then become names in old chronicles. But Baghdad remains a symbol, a reminder that brilliance is fragile, that arrogance invites storms, that sometimes the world doesn't fall because it lacks strength, but because it believes too deeply in its own safety.